The digital clock on the dashboard read 11:47 p.m. when Colonel James Mitchell turned onto Riverside Drive. His shoulders ached from standing at attention during the evening's military ceremony. He had spent the last 4 hours at Fort Meade, watching young soldiers receive their promotions and medals. As a 25-year veteran of the United States Army, James had attended hundreds of these ceremonies. They never got old. Seeing the pride in those young faces always reminded him why he served. James wore simple civilian clothes now, a dark blue sweater and jeans. His dress uniform hung carefully in a garment bag in the back seat. He drove his personal car, a well-maintained silver sedan that he had owned for 6 years. The neighborhood around him was quiet. Large houses sat behind neat lawns. Street lights cast orange pools of light every 50 feet. Most windows were dark. It was a Tuesday night and normal people were sleeping. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. A text from his wife, Maria. "Drive safe. Love you," James smiled. After 23 years of marriage, she still worried when he drove home late. He was about to reply when he noticed the red and blue lights flashing in his rearview mirror. James felt his stomach tighten. He checked his speedometer. He was going 32 in a 35 zone. He had not run any stop signs. His mind raced through the last few minutes of driving. Had he forgotten to signal? No. He had been driving straight on this road for the past 2 miles. James put on his turn signal and pulled over to the curb. He placed both hands on the steering wheel where they would be visible. His military training kicked in immediately. Stay calm, follow instructions, do not make sudden movements. The police car stopped behind him, its lights still flashing. James watched in his side mirror as a single officer stepped out. The man was tall and heavy with a thick neck and a crew cut. He walked slowly toward James's car, one hand resting on his belt near his weapon. James kept his hands on the wheel and waited. The officer stopped at James's window and shined a flashlight directly into his face. James blinked but did not move his hands. "License and registration," the officer said. His voice was flat and cold. No greeting, no explanation for the stop. "Yes, sir," James replied calmly. "My license is in my wallet in my back pocket. My registration is in the glove box. I am going to reach for them now." The officer said nothing. James moved slowly, taking his wallet from his back pocket with 2 fingers. He handed his license through the window. Then he opened the glove box carefully and retrieved the registration and insurance card. The officer took them without a word and studied them under his flashlight. "Colonel James Mitchell," the officer read aloud. His tone was mocking. "That your real name?" James felt a chill run through him. Something was wrong. "Yes, sir. That is my name." "You know why I pulled you over?" the officer asked. "No, sir. I do not." "Your left taillight is out." The officer walked to the back of the car and tapped on something with his flashlight. James heard a cracking sound. His heart sank. That taillight had been working fine when he left Fort Meade. He was certain of it. The officer returned to the window. James could now see his name tag. Officer D. Brennan. "This your car?" Brennan asked. "Yes, sir. You got proof of that? Besides this registration here?" Brennan held up the document. James felt confused. "The registration should be sufficient proof. It has my name on it and it matches my license." "I asked you a question," Brennan said, his voice harder now. "You got any other proof this is your car and not some stolen vehicle?" "Officer, I promise you this is my car. I bought it 6 years ago. I can show you the insurance documents on my phone if that helps." "Keep your hands where I can see them," Brennan snapped. "Do not reach for anything unless I tell you to." James put his hands back on the steering wheel. His pulse was racing now. He had been through situations like this before, but never this aggressive. Never this fast. "I apologize, officer. I was only trying to help." "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" Brennan asked, leaning down to look into the car more carefully. "I am driving home. I live about 15 minutes from here." "Where were you coming from?" "Fort Meade. I attended a military ceremony there." Brennan laughed, a short, mean sound. "Right, you expect me to believe that? You are telling me you are in the military?" "Yes, sir. I am a colonel in the United States Army." "Sure you are," Brennan said. "And I am the president. Step out of the vehicle." James felt ice in his veins. "Officer, may I ask why you need me to step out?" "I have provided my license and registration. Everything is in order. I said step out of the vehicle now." Brennan's hand moved closer to his weapon. James knew he had no choice. He opened the door slowly and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The night air was cool against his skin. He stood straight, his hands visible at his sides, and waited for instructions. Turn around. Face the car. Put your hands on the roof. James did as he was told. He placed his palms flat on the cold metal of the car's roof. His military training screamed at him to stay calm, to breathe, to follow every instruction exactly, but his mind also recognized the danger he was in. This officer was looking for a reason. Any reason? Brennan began patting him down. The search was rough and aggressive. Hands grabbed at his pockets, his waistband, even his ankles. It was far more invasive than any normal traffic stop required. James said nothing. He stared at the reflection of the flashing lights on his car's paint and tried to control his breathing. You got anything in your pockets I should know about? Any weapons? Any drugs? Brennan asked. No, sir. Nothing illegal. We will see about that. Another police car pulled up behind Brennan's vehicle. James could see it in the car window's reflection. A second officer got out. This one was smaller, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, a woman. She approached Brennan. Everything okay here, Derek? She asked. Fine, Lisa, just checking this guy out. Broken taillight, suspicious behavior. James heard the woman officer, Lisa, move closer. What suspicious behavior? She asked quietly. He is driving through this neighborhood late at night. Gave me attitude when I asked for his documents. I am searching the vehicle. Did you get consent for that? Lisa asked. I do not need consent. I smell marijuana. James's eyes widened. That was a lie. A complete lie. He did not smoke marijuana. Never had. There was nothing in his car except his uniform and some papers from the ceremony. But he knew what this meant. Brennan was manufacturing a reason to search, and there was nothing James could do to stop him. Officer, I assure you there are no drugs in my vehicle, James said, keeping his voice level and respectful. Did I ask you to speak? Brennan shouted. Keep your mouth shut and your hands on the car. Lisa moved to where James could see her in his peripheral vision. She looked uncomfortable. Her eyes moved from Brennan to James and back again. James tried to make eye contact with her, but she looked away. Brennan opened the driver's door and began searching. James heard him throwing things around inside. The glove box opening. Papers rustling. The center console being emptied. Then Brennan moved to the back seat. James heard the garment bag being unzipped. What is this? Brennan called out. That is my dress uniform, officer, from the ceremony I attended tonight. Brennan pulled the uniform out of the bag and held it up in the flashlight beam. Even from where he stood, James could see his name tape clearly visible on the chest. Colonel J. Mitchell. His rank insignia gleamed on the shoulders. His ribbons and medals were perfectly aligned on the left breast. 25 years of service on display. For a moment, Brennan was silent. Then he stuffed the uniform back into the bag carelessly and dropped it on the ground beside the car. Hey, James said before he could stop himself. That uniform represented everything he had worked for. Seeing it thrown on the dirty sidewalk made his blood boil. You got a problem? Brennan was in his face now, close enough that James could smell coffee on his breath. No, sir, James said quietly, forcing himself to calm down. No problem. Lisa stepped forward. Derek, maybe we should just write the citation for the taillight and let him go. Everything checks out. His license is valid. The registration matches. I do not think we need to. I will decide what we need to do, Brennan cut her off. I am the senior officer here, Chen. You want to question my judgment? Lisa stepped back, her jaw tight. James saw her hand move to the camera on her chest. She was recording this. Good. At least someone would have evidence of what was happening. Lights were coming on in the houses nearby. James saw curtains moving. A door opened across the street and a man in a bathrobe stepped onto his porch holding up a phone. He was recording too. Brennan noticed the growing audience. His face reddened. All of you get back inside. This is police business. Nobody moved. More phones came out. More people emerged from their houses. James felt a small spark of hope. These witnesses might save his life. Brennan turned back to James with fury in his eyes. The presence of witnesses seemed to make him more aggressive, not less. Sit down on the curb, he ordered, pointing to the concrete edge near James's feet. James looked at the dirty curb. Oil stains marked the concrete. Pieces of trash littered the gutter. Officer, is that really necessary? I have cooperated with everything you have asked. I said sit down. Brennan's voice rose to a shout. His hand went to his weapon again, resting on the grip. James sat. The concrete was cold and rough through his jeans. He kept his hands visible, resting them on his knees. His mind was racing. He was a colonel in the United States Army. He had commanded soldiers in combat zones. He had briefed generals and members of Congress. And here he sat on a dirty curb being treated like a criminal for driving home from work. Lisa Chen stood a few feet away, shifting her weight from foot to foot. James could see the conflict on her face. She knew this was wrong. But she was not stopping it. Brennan went back to searching the car. He opened the trunk and began pulling things out. A roadside emergency kit, a folding chair James used for his son's soccer games, a box of books he had been meaning to donate. Everything was thrown onto the sidewalk in a pile. The neighbors watched silently, their phones still raised and recording. "Derek, come on," Lisa said quietly. "You have checked everything. There is nothing here." "I will decide when I am done searching," Brennan said without looking at her. He was leaning deep into the trunk now, running his hands along the edges, checking under the carpet. He was desperately looking for something, anything, to justify this stop. James sat on the curb and practiced the breathing techniques he had learned in the Army. In through the nose, out through the mouth. "Stay calm, do not react. Do not give him a reason." His hands trembled slightly and he pressed them harder against his knees to steady them. A woman's voice called out from one of the houses. "Officer, what did this man do? Why are you treating him like this?" Brennan spun around. "Ma'am, I need you to go back inside your house right now." "This is my neighborhood," the woman replied. She was elderly, with white hair and a purple bathrobe. "I have lived here for 40 years. I have a right to stand on my own property and observe what happens on my street." Other voices joined hers. A younger man called out, "We are recording this. We can see what you are doing." Brennan's face was turning red. James could see the veins in his neck bulging. The officer slammed the trunk closed and marched back to where James sat. "Stand up," he ordered. James stood slowly, his legs stiff from sitting on the cold concrete. "Empty your pockets, everything. Right now." James reached into his front pockets and pulled them inside out. A few coins fell onto the sidewalk. A receipt from the gas station where he had stopped earlier. His car keys. "That is everything, officer." Back pockets, too. James turned and emptied his back pockets. His wallet fell out, landing on the ground near his feet. It fell open, and several cards scattered across the concrete. His driver's license lay face up. His credit cards. His insurance card. And his military ID, which slid under the edge of his car in the darkness. Brennan bent down and snatched up the wallet. He went through it roughly, pulling out every card, every receipt, every scrap of paper. He held up James's credit card. "This your card? Or did you steal this too?" "It is mine, officer. You can check the name. It matches my license." Lisa moved closer to the scattered cards on the ground. She was looking at something near the car's front tire, but in the darkness and confusion she could not see what it was. James's military ID lay there, invisible in the shadows. "Why do you have so many credit cards?" Brennan demanded. 4 different cards. "What are you doing with all these?" James almost laughed at the absurdity of the question. "Officer, many people carry multiple credit cards. It is normal. One is for personal use. One is for gas. One gives me airline miles. One is a backup." "Or you stole them," Brennan said. "The names on all those cards are mine. You can verify that right now." Brennan threw the wallet back at James's feet. Cards scattered again. "Pick it up. And do not try anything stupid." James bent down and began collecting his cards. His hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from anger. He was being humiliated in front of his neighbors, accused of crimes he had not committed, all because of a broken taillight that probably had not even been broken until Brennan struck it with his flashlight. He picked up his license, his credit cards, his insurance card. But he did not see his military ID in the darkness. It remained under the edge of the car, hidden in the shadow cast by the flashing police lights. Lisa finally spoke up more firmly. "Derek, this has gone on long enough. You have searched his car thoroughly. You found nothing. His documents are all legitimate. We need to write him a citation for the taillight and let him go." "Are you telling me how to do my job?" Brennan rounded on her, his face inches from hers. Lisa did not back down this time. "I am telling you that we have no legal reason to detain this man any longer. We have no probable cause. We have no evidence of any crime except a broken taillight, which is a simple fix-it ticket. I smell marijuana. Brennan insisted. No, you do not, Lisa said flatly. I have been standing here for 20 minutes and I smell nothing. There is nothing in that car. You know it and I know it. For a moment, James thought Brennan might explode. The officer's fists clenched at his sides. His breathing was heavy. But then he seemed to get control of himself. He turned away from Lisa and walked back to his patrol car. James remained standing where he was, his wallet now back in his pocket, minus the military ID he had not noticed was missing. Lisa looked at him with something like sympathy in her eyes. I am sorry, she said quietly so Brennan would not hear. James nodded slightly. He did not trust himself to speak. If he opened his mouth, he might say something that would make this situation even worse. Brennan returned with a clipboard and a pen. He was writing rapidly, his hand moving in angry strokes across the paper. James could see multiple citation forms on the clipboard. Not just one, multiple. Lisa saw them too. Derek, what are you doing? Writing citations. Like you said. Brennan's voice was cold. He finished writing and tore off 3 separate tickets. He shoved them at James's chest. James caught them before they fell. Sign here, Brennan said, pointing at the bottom of each form. James looked at the citations. One was for the broken taillight. That was expected. But the second one was for failure to signal when changing lanes. James had not changed lanes in the past 20 minutes. The third citation was for suspicious behavior and failure to comply with officer instructions. Officer, I did not fail to signal. I have been driving straight on this road, and I have complied with every instruction you have given me. Are you arguing with me? Brennan's hand moved toward his weapon again. Lisa stepped between them. Just sign them. You can contest them in court later. James looked at her. She gave him a small nod. He understood. Sign them and get out of here alive. Fight this battle later in a courtroom, where there were rules and witnesses and lawyers. Not here on a dark street with an angry officer who seemed to want any excuse to use his weapon. James signed all 3 citations. His handwriting was messy because his hands were shaking so badly. Brennan snatched the clipboard back and tore off the copies for James. He threw them at James's chest again, and this time several of the papers fell to the ground. Pick them up and get out of here, Brennan said. And get that taillight fixed or I will pull you over again. James bent down and collected the citation forms from the sidewalk. He straightened up and looked at both officers. Am I free to go now? Get out of my sight, Brennan said. James walked around to the driver's side of his car. His legs felt weak. His whole body was trembling with adrenaline and suppressed anger. He got into the car and started the engine. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. As he pulled away from the curb, he looked in his rearview mirror. Brennan and Lisa were standing by their patrol cars. Brennan was talking, gesturing angrily. Lisa stood with her arms crossed, shaking her head. The neighbors were still on their porches, still holding their phones. James drove exactly the speed limit for the next 15 minutes until he reached his house. He pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. For a long moment, he just sat there in the darkness, his hands still on the wheel, trying to process what had just happened. The front door opened, and Maria appeared, backlit by the light from inside. She hurried down the steps toward the car. James got out slowly, his legs stiff and shaky. James, what happened? You are so late. I was worried. He looked at his wife. Strong, beautiful Maria, who had stood by him through 3 deployments, 2 overseas assignments, and more army moves than he could count. And he did not know what to say. How could he explain what had just happened? How could he put into words the fear, the humiliation, the rage he felt? I got pulled over, he said finally. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Distant and hollow, Maria's eyes widened. She saw the expression on his face, the way he was holding himself. Come inside, she said, taking his arm. Come inside and tell me everything. James sat at his kitchen table at 1 a.m. with a cup of coffee he had not touched. The 3 citations lay spread out in front of him like evidence of a crime. Maria sat beside him, her hand on his arm, listening as he recounted every detail of the traffic stop. Her face grew harder with each sentence. He broke your taillight, she said when James described the sound he had heard. He broke it on purpose to justify the stop. I cannot prove that, James said quietly. I did not see him do it. But yes, I think that is what happened. And then he searched your entire car for no reason. He threw your uniform on the ground. He made you sit on a dirty curb like a criminal. Maria's voice was rising. James, this is not just a bad traffic stop. This is abuse of power. This is racial profiling. James rubbed his face with both hands. He was exhausted, but his mind would not stop replaying the encounter. Every word, every gesture, every moment when he thought Brennan might pull his weapon. I know what it was, Maria. I have lived through this before. We both know I have. But what can I do about it? You report him, Maria said immediately. You file a complaint. You tell his supervisors what he did. And then what? They do some internal investigation. They find no wrongdoing. Brennan gets a note in his file that means nothing, and the next time he pulls me over, he remembers my face. James shook his head. I just want to forget about it and move on. No. Maria's voice was firm. She turned his chair so he was facing her. James Mitchell, you listen to me. You are not just anyone. You are a colonel in the United States Army. You have rank. You have credibility. You have 25 years of spotless service. If you do not report this, if you just let it go, then Brennan will do this to someone else. Someone who does not have your resources or your position. Someone who maybe does not survive the encounter. James looked at his wife. She was right. He knew she was right. But the thought of going through an official complaint process, of reliving that humiliation again and again in interviews and statements, made him feel sick. There were witnesses, Maria continued. You said neighbors were recording. That other officer, Lisa, she saw everything. You have evidence. This is not just your word against his. James picked up one of the citations, the one for suspicious behavior and failure to comply. He read it again, anger building in his chest. I complied with everything. Every single thing he asked me to do. And he still wrote this. Because he is covering himself, Maria said. He knows he went too far. He is creating a paper trail that makes you look like the problem instead of him. They sat in silence for a moment. The kitchen clock ticked loudly on the wall. Outside, a car drove past, and James tensed involuntarily, listening to see if it would stop. It did not. He forced himself to relax. I need to think about this, James said finally. Let me sleep on it. I will decide in the morning, but he did not sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows move as cars passed by outside. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Brennan's face. He felt the cold concrete of the curb under him. He heard the mocking tone when Brennan laughed at him for saying he was in the Army. At 5:30 in the morning, James gave up on sleep. He got up, took a shower, and put on his uniform. He had a meeting at Fort Meade at 8. He looked at himself in the mirror, at the eagles on his shoulders that marked his rank, at the rows of ribbons on his chest that told the story of his career, combat deployments, meritorious service, Bronze Stars. He had earned every one of them, and last night none of it had mattered. To Officer Brennan, he had just been another suspicious person in a nice neighborhood who did not belong there. Maria was making breakfast when he came downstairs. She took one look at his face and knew he had not slept. You are going to report it, she said. It was not a question. Yes, James said. I am going to report it. After breakfast, James called the police department's main number. He was transferred twice before reaching the Internal Affairs Division. A woman with a tired voice answered. Internal Affairs Officer Martinez speaking. Good morning. My name is Colonel James Mitchell. I would like to file a complaint about a traffic stop that occurred last night. There was a pause. Colonel, are you military? Yes, ma'am. United States Army. I am stationed at Fort Meade. The woman's tone changed slightly, becoming more professional. I see. Can you give me the details of the incident? James went through the entire story again. The traffic stop. The aggressive search. The citations that seemed retaliatory. Officer Martinez took notes, asking questions occasionally. When James mentioned that his uniform had been thrown on the ground, he heard her sharp intake of breath. Do you have the officer's name? She asked. Yes. Officer D. Brennan, badge number 41.7. Another pause. Longer this time. I see. And you said there were witnesses? Several neighbors came out and were recording on their phones. And Officer Brennan's partner was there. Officer Lisa Chen. Okay, Colonel Mitchell. I am going to open a case file and assign this to an investigator. Someone will contact you within 48 hours to get a full statement. Do you have the citation numbers? James read off the numbers from all 3 citations. Thank you. Is there anything else you would like to add? James hesitated. Then he said, Yes. I want to know if Officer Brennan has had previous complaints filed against him. I want to know if this is a pattern. I cannot share information about other cases, sir, but I assure you this will be investigated thoroughly. After he hung up, James sat looking at his phone. It felt inadequate. A phone call, a case number. It did not feel like enough, but it was a start. He drove to Fort Meade for his meeting. As he walked through the base, salutes were exchanged with lower-ranking soldiers. People greeted him with respect. Good morning, Colonel. Morning, sir. This was his world, a world where rank and achievement mattered, where there were clear rules and consequences for breaking them. After his meeting, James stopped by the base legal office. Captain Sarah Kim, one of the base attorneys, looked up when he entered. Good morning, Colonel. What can I do for you? James explained the situation. Captain Kim's expression grew serious as she listened. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair. Sir, this is definitely something we should document on our end as well. You are returning from an official military function when this occurred, which means this could be considered an incident involving military personnel in the performance of their duties. I was off duty, James said. I was in civilian clothes driving my personal vehicle. But you were returning from a military ceremony at a military installation. That creates a connection. Captain Kim pulled out a legal pad and began writing. I am going to draft a letter to the police department's internal affairs division and the chief of police. We will request copies of all incident reports, body cam footage, and investigation results. This puts them on notice that the military is watching this case. James felt a weight lift slightly. Thank you, Captain. Sir, if I may speak freely. Captain Kim looked at him seriously. This kind of thing happens too often. But you are in a unique position. You have the rank, the credibility, and the resources to fight back. Most people do not. Whatever you decide to do, know that the legal office is here to support you. James left the legal office feeling more determined. Maria was right. Captain Kim was right. He had to see this through. Meanwhile, across town at the police station, Officer Lisa Chen sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen. She had not slept well either. The traffic stop kept replaying in her mind. She had written her own report of the incident, following proper procedure. But as she read through it now, she knew it was not enough. A dry official report would not capture what had really happened. It would not show Brennan's aggression. It would not show the fear in James Mitchell's eyes as he sat on that curb. Lisa opened a new document and began typing a second report. This one was more detailed, more personal. She described Brennan's tone and body language. She noted that there was no marijuana smell despite Brennan's claims. She mentioned the neighbors recording the incident. She described how Brennan had thrown the military uniform on the ground and refused to back down even after seeing it. When she finished, she attached both reports to an email and sent them to Internal Affairs. Then she sent a copy to her own personal email address. She had been a police officer for 8 years. She had seen bad cops before, but she had never been willing to speak up against them. The culture of the department discouraged it. You did not rat on fellow officers. You did not break the thin blue line. But last night had been different. Last night she had watched a decorated military officer be humiliated and threatened for no reason other than the color of his skin. And she had done almost nothing to stop it. That shame sat heavy in her chest. Her desk phone rang. It was Sergeant Mike Torres from Internal Affairs. Chen, I got your reports. Can you come down here for a minute? Lisa's stomach clenched. Yes, sir. I will be right there. She walked down the hallway to the Internal Affairs office, her heart pounding. Sergeant Torres was a serious man with gray hair and a reputation for fairness. He gestured for her to sit down. Tell me about last night, he said. Lisa went through everything. Torres listened without interrupting, taking notes. When she finished, he sat back and looked at her. You know Brennan is going to be angry when he finds out you reported this. I know. He is going to make your life difficult. Guys like him, they have friends. They have allies. You might find yourself without backup on calls. You might get stuck with the worst shifts. People are going to call you a rat. I know that too, sir. Torres studied her face. So why do it? Lisa thought about James Mitchell sitting on that curb. She thought about how easily that situation could have turned deadly. Because it was wrong, sir. Because if I do not speak up when I see something wrong, then I am part of the problem. Because I became a police officer to protect people, not to abuse them. Torres nodded slowly. Okay, I'm going to need a full recorded statement from you. And I want you to know, this case just got assigned to me personally. Between your report and the complaint we just received from Colonel Mitchell, plus the legal letter from Fort Meade that came in this morning, this is going to be a big deal. Officer Derek Brennan sat in the break room drinking coffee when his supervisor, Lieutenant Karen Walsh, appeared in the doorway. Brennan, my office now. Brennan looked up, annoyed. I am on my break. Now, Walsh repeated, her voice hard. Brennan followed her down the hallway, confused. Walsh closed her office door behind them and turned to face him. Her expression was cold. Tell me about the traffic stop you made last night around midnight. Silver sedan, driver named James Mitchell. Brennan shrugged. Routine stop. Broken taillight. Guy had an attitude, so I searched the vehicle, wrote him some citations and let him go. That's your story? Walsh pulled out a file folder and dropped it on her desk. Because I have got something very different here. I've got a formal complaint from a United States Army colonel saying you racially profiled him, conducted an illegal search, and filed false citations. I have got a report from your partner, Officer Chen, backing up his version of events. And I have got a very unhappy phone call from the chief this morning, because Fort Meade's legal office is demanding body cam footage and a full investigation. Brennan's face went red. Chen filed a report against me? That backstabbing. Watch it, Walsh cut him off. Chen did her job. She reported what she saw. Now Internal Affairs wants your badge and gun. You are on administrative leave pending investigation. What? You cannot be serious. I did nothing wrong. Then the investigation will show that, won't it? Walsh held out her hand. Badge and gun, now. Brennan wanted to argue, but he could see there was no point. He unclipped his badge from his belt and slammed it on the desk. Then he removed his service weapon and placed it beside the badge. This is garbage. That guy was suspicious. I had every right to search his vehicle. A colonel in the Army driving home from a military ceremony is suspicious? Walsh's voice was thick with sarcasm. Get out of my office, Brennan. You will be notified when Internal Affairs wants to interview you. Brennan stormed out of the building, rage burning in his chest. In his car, he sat gripping the steering wheel, breathing hard. Chen had betrayed him. That was the only way to see it. She was supposed to have his back, and instead she had stabbed him in it. He pulled out his phone and started texting other officers he knew. Within an hour, word had spread through the department about what happened. Some officers sent messages of support. Hang in there, man. IA is always looking for reasons to nail us. Others said nothing, which told Brennan everything he needed to know about where they stood. Back at Fort Meade, James was in a meeting with his commanding officer, Brigadier General Robert Hayes. Hayes was a stern man in his late 50s with silver hair and a no-nonsense attitude. He listened to James's account of the traffic stop without interrupting. When James finished, Hayes was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "This is unacceptable. A decorated officer in my command was harassed and threatened while returning from military business. I'm going to make some phone calls." "Sir, I do not want special treatment because of my rank," James said. "I want the system to work the way it should work for everyone." "I understand that, Colonel. But the reality is that your rank gives you credibility and access that others do not have. We can use that to create change." Hayes leaned forward. "I am going to release a statement supporting you and calling for police accountability. This will probably attract media attention. Are you prepared for that?" James had not thought about the media. The idea made him uncomfortable. "I did not file this complaint to become a public figure, sir." "I know. But sometimes these things take on a life of their own. Think about it. Talk to your wife. If you decide you want to speak publicly about this, we will support you. If you want to keep it quiet and let the investigation proceed, we will support that too." That evening, James discussed it with Maria. They sat in their living room while their 2 teenage children did homework upstairs, unaware of what was happening. "The media changes everything," James said. "Once this becomes a public story, there is no taking it back. Our family will be in the spotlight." "Our family is strong," Maria said. "And if going public helps prevent this from happening to someone else, then maybe that is what we should do. I do not know if I can relive that night over and over in interviews." Maria took his hand. "You have faced worse. You have served in combat. You have led soldiers through impossible situations. You can do this too. The next morning, General Hayes released a statement through the base's public affairs office. It was brief but powerful. Colonel James Mitchell is an exemplary officer who has served this nation with distinction for 25 years. The treatment he received during a routine traffic stop is deeply troubling and represents a failure of the principles of equal justice that military members fight to defend. We fully support Colonel Mitchell and trust that appropriate action will be taken. The statement was picked up by local news outlets by noon. By evening, it was on national news. Army Colonel claims racial profiling in traffic stop, read one headline. Decorated military officer files complaint against police, read another. James's phone began ringing constantly. Reporters requesting interviews. Civil rights organizations offering legal support. Friends and colleagues calling to express their support. It was overwhelming. Sergeant Torres from Internal Affairs called James on the third day after the incident. Colonel Mitchell, we have reviewed the body cam footage from Officer Brennan. I would like you to come in and view it with me and provide a formal statement. James drove to the police station with Maria. Torres met them in a small conference room. A laptop sat on the table, ready to play the video. Before we begin, I want to prepare you, Torres said. This footage is difficult to watch. Watching yourself in a situation like that, even though you know how it ends, can be triggering. I understand, James said, but he was not prepared for how it would feel. The video started from Brennan's point of view as he approached the car. James heard his own voice, calm and respectful, explaining where he would reach for his documents. He watched himself comply with every instruction. The video had audio, and James could hear the increasing aggression in Brennan's voice. The mocking laugh when James mentioned the military. The order to exit the vehicle with no justification. Maria's hand tightened on his arm as they watched Brennan force James to sit on the curb. The camera showed James's face clearly in that moment, and James barely recognized himself. He looked scared. No, more than scared, terrified. The search of the vehicle was even worse to watch. Brennan threw things around carelessly. When he pulled out the military uniform and held it up, the camera captured the insignia and ribbons clearly. There was a pause, just a few seconds, where Brennan must have realized what he was looking at. Then he stuffed it back in the bag and dropped it on the ground. The video showed Lisa Chen arriving and questioning the stop. It showed Brennan claiming he smelled marijuana. It showed the neighbors coming out with their phones. And it showed James picking up his documents from the ground, his hands visibly shaking. When the video ended, James sat in silence. Maria had tears in her eyes. Torres closed the laptop. I am sorry you had to see that, he said quietly. James found his voice. That is the evidence? That is part of it. We also have statements from 5 neighbors who were recording. We have Officer Chen's detailed report, and we have something else. Torres pulled out a piece of paper. We pulled Officer Brennan's personnel file. He has had 8 previous complaints filed against him over the past 6 years. 8. Every single one involved accusations of racial profiling or excessive force during traffic stops. All of them were investigated, and all of them resulted in minimal or no disciplinary action. 8 complaints and he was still on the street? Maria's voice was sharp with anger. That is the failure of our system, Torres admitted. Complaints get filed, investigations happen, but unless there is overwhelming evidence, officers usually get the benefit of the doubt. It takes a lot for an officer to actually face serious consequences, but this time we have clear video evidence. We have a credible witness who is also an officer. We have a victim with impeccable credentials, and we have a pattern of behavior that can no longer be ignored. James felt numb. 8 other people had gone through something like he had. 8 other people had filed complaints, and nothing had changed. How many others had there been who never filed complaints at all? How many people had been too scared or too cynical about the system, or too worried about retaliation? What happens now? James asked. The investigation continues for another week or 2. We interview everyone involved. We compile all the evidence. Then we present our findings to the chief and recommend disciplinary action. In a case like this, with this much evidence, I expect that recommendation will be termination. Just termination? Maria asked. He assaulted my husband. He lied on official documents. He abused his authority. Should he not face criminal charges? That is possible, Torres said. The district attorney's office is reviewing the case for potential civil rights violations. Federal prosecutors are also looking at it. But I want to be honest with you. Even with all this evidence, getting criminal charges to stick against a police officer is difficult. Juries tend to give officers the benefit of the doubt. But termination and losing his ability to work in law enforcement that we can make happen. James stood up. He felt exhausted but also strangely lighter. The burden of proof was no longer entirely on him. The system was working, slowly and imperfectly, but working. Thank you, Sergeant Torres, for taking this seriously, for doing a thorough investigation. It is my job, sir. And for what it is worth, I am sorry this happened to you. It should not have. And we are going to do everything we can to make sure Officer Brennan does not have the opportunity to do it to anyone else. When James and Maria left the police station, there were 3 news vans parked outside. Reporters rushed toward them with cameras and microphones. Colonel Mitchell, can you comment on the investigation? Colonel, have you seen the body cam footage? What do you want to see happen to Officer Brennan? James stopped and looked at the cameras. Maria squeezed his hand. He thought about those 8 previous complaints. He thought about all the people who had never filed complaints. He thought about the system that had protected Brennan for 6 years while he continued to abuse his power. James took a breath and spoke to the cameras. I have seen the body cam footage from my traffic stop. It was difficult to watch, but it confirmed what I already knew. I was pulled over, searched, and cited not because I broke any meaningful laws, but because Officer Brennan made assumptions about me based on my appearance. I filed this complaint not for myself alone, but because I learned today that 8 other people filed similar complaints against the same officer over the past 6 years. 8 people who were ignored or dismissed. How many more never filed complaints at all? A reporter called out, "What do you want to see happen?" "I want accountability," James said firmly. "I want a system where complaints are taken seriously the first time, not the 9th time. I want training that actually prevents this behavior instead of just checking a box. And I want every officer to understand that the badge is a responsibility, not a license to abuse power." Another reporter asked, "Do you think your military rank helped you get this investigation taken seriously?" James paused. It was a good question. An important question. "Yes," he admitted. "My rank gave me credibility and resources that most people do not have. That is part of the problem. Justice should not depend on whether you are a colonel or a construction worker. It should be equal for everyone. I am using my position to shine a light on this because I can. But the system needs to protect people who cannot do what I am doing." The reporters fired more questions, but Maria gently pulled James toward their car. "That is enough for now," she said to the cameras with a polite smile. "Thank you." In the car, James felt drained. "Did I say the right things?" "You said exactly what needed to be said," Maria assured him. "You were honest and you connected this to something bigger than just your experience. That matters." The next morning, James's press conference was everywhere. Local news, national news, social media. The video of him speaking to reporters had been viewed millions of times. Support poured in from unexpected places. Veterans groups issued statements backing him. Civil rights organizations praised his courage in speaking out. Other military officers, both active and retired, shared their own stories of similar encounters. But there was also backlash. Some police unions issued statements defending Brennan and criticizing James for undermining law enforcement. Online comment sections filled with people questioning James's account, suggesting he must have done something to provoke the stop. Some accused him of playing the race card or seeking attention. James tried not to read the comments, but he could not help himself. Late at night, when he should have been sleeping, he found himself scrolling through them. Maria caught him one night and took the phone from his hands. "Stop torturing yourself. Those people do not know you. They do not know what happened. Their opinions do not matter. They represent something, though," James said. "They represent all the people who will never believe this happens, no matter how much evidence we show them. Then we focus on the people who do believe it," Maria said. "The people who are willing to listen and learn and change. Those are the people who matter." The investigation continued. Sergeant Torres interviewed all 5 neighbors who had recorded the incident. Their videos, taken from different angles, corroborated everything James and Lisa Chen had said. Torres also pulled the recordings from the emergency dispatch system. When Brennan called in the stop, he reported suspicious vehicle in residential area as his reason, never mentioning the taillight until his second call several minutes later. Chief Carl Thompson reviewed the investigation file personally. He was a career officer who had worked his way up through the ranks over 30 years. He had seen the department change, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, but this case made him feel physically sick. The evidence was overwhelming. The body cam footage alone was damning, but combined with everything else, there was no defense. Thompson called a meeting with his command staff. "We have got a serious problem," he told them. "Not just with Brennan, but with our entire system for handling complaints. 8 previous complaints against one officer, and we did nothing meaningful about any of them." "What does that say about us?" Lieutenant Walsh spoke up. "It says we have been failing, sir. We have been too quick to close ranks and protect our own, even when our own are clearly in the wrong. How many other officers have multiple complaints that we have ignored or minimized?" Thompson asked. "I want a full audit. Every officer with more than 2 complaints in the past 10 years, I want their files reviewed." A captain from the patrol division shifted uncomfortably. "Chief, that is going to upset a lot of people. The union is going to fight it." "Let them fight it," Thompson said. "I am more concerned about the public trust than union politics. If we do not clean our own house, someone else will do it for us. The state could step in. The DOJ could launch a pattern and practice investigation. We fix this now on our terms, or it gets fixed for us later." 2 weeks after the traffic stop, Sergeant Torres completed his investigation. He submitted a 20-page report to Chief Thompson with a clear recommendation: termination of Officer Derek Brennan for conduct unbecoming, abuse of authority, falsifying reports, and violation of civil rights. The report also recommended formal discipline for the supervisors who had failed to act on the previous 8 complaints. Thompson called Brennan in for a final meeting. Brennan arrived with his union representative and a lawyer. They sat across from Thompson in a tense conference room. Thompson slid the investigation report across the table. "The investigation found that you engaged in racial profiling, conducted an illegal search, filed false citations, and showed a pattern of similar behavior over multiple years," Thompson said. "I am terminating your employment effective immediately. You are also being referred to the State Licensing Board for potential revocation of your law enforcement certification." Brennan's face went red. "This is garbage. You are throwing me under the bus because some colonel cried to the media." "I am holding you accountable for your actions," Thompson said coldly. "Actions that were clearly documented on your own body cam. You had 8 previous chances to correct your behavior. You chose not to. Now you face the consequences." The union representative tried to argue, citing Brennan's years of service and claiming the punishment was excessive, but Thompson had made his decision. The evidence was too clear. The public pressure was too intense, and honestly, Thompson thought it was the right thing to do. Brennan should have been fired years ago. After Brennan left, escorted out of the building by security, Thompson called James. "Colonel Mitchell, this is Chief Thompson. I wanted to inform you personally that Officer Brennan has been terminated. The investigation found clear evidence supporting your complaint." "Thank you, Chief," James said. "What about the other complaints against him? The 8 previous ones?" "We are reviewing all of those cases. We will be reaching out to those individuals to apologize and, if appropriate, to void any citations they received. We are also implementing new policies for handling complaints and investigating patterns of behavior." "With respect, Chief, policies are not enough. You need cultural change. You need officers who feel safe reporting misconduct they witness. You need supervisors who take complaints seriously from the beginning." Thompson was quiet for a moment. "You are right, which is why I would like to invite you to help us. We are developing new training programs on bias, de-escalation, and accountability. I would like you to be part of that process. Your perspective as both a person who experienced this and as a military leader would be invaluable." James had not expected that. "I would need to take leave from my military duties." "I understand. Think about it. Talk to your command. The offer stands." James discussed it with General Hayes, who was immediately supportive. "This is exactly the kind of civil-military cooperation we should be encouraging," Hayes said. "You have 6 months of accumulated leave time. Use some of it for this. It is important work," so James agreed. He took a 3-month leave from Fort Meade to work with the police department on their reform initiatives. It was strange walking into the police station every day, working alongside the same organization that had employed Brennan. But most officers he met were professional and genuinely interested in improving. Officer Lisa Chen was promoted to sergeant in recognition of her courage in reporting misconduct. When James met with her to thank her, she shook her head. "I should have done more during the stop itself. I should have physically stepped between you and Brennan. I should have called a supervisor immediately. I did the bare minimum, and that haunts me." "You did more than most officers would have done," James said. "And you are using this experience to become a better leader. That matters." Lisa became one of James's closest allies in the reform effort. Together, they developed training scenarios based on real incidents, including James's traffic stop. They taught officers how to recognize when a colleague was crossing the line and how to intervene safely. They emphasized that real loyalty meant holding each other accountable, not covering up misconduct. The training was not popular with everyone. Some veteran officers resented being told they needed to change. Some walked out of sessions. Others complained to the union. But slowly, attitudes began to shift. Younger officers especially embraced the new approach. They wanted to be part of a department they could be proud of. James also worked with the department to establish a civilian review board with real authority. Community members could now review complaints and investigation findings independently. The board could recommend discipline and policy changes. It was not perfect, but it was a step toward accountability. Throughout this time, James continued to receive media attention. He was invited to speak at conferences on police reform. He testified before state legislative committees considering new accountability laws. He became a reluctant public figure, always emphasizing that he was just one person and that the real heroes were people like Lisa Chen, who spoke up from inside the system. The 8 people who had previously filed complaints against Brennan were contacted by the department. 5 of them agreed to meet with Chief Thompson personally. Thompson apologized to each of them for the department's failure to act on their complaints. 2 accepted financial settlements for the harassment they endured. 1 declined, saying he just wanted to forget about it and move on. All of them had their citations voided and their records cleared. One of those individuals was a young man named Marcus Johnson, who had been 17 when Brennan pulled him over 3 years earlier. Marcus was now 20, working 2 jobs and trying to save money for college. When James met him, Marcus was skeptical. "No offense, Colonel, but you got justice because of your rank and your uniform," Marcus said. "I got nothing because I was just a black kid in a hoodie." "You are absolutely right," James said. "And that is why I am trying to change the system, so that what happened to you gets taken seriously the first time, not ignored until someone like me comes along." Marcus studied him. "You really think it will change?" "I think it can change," James said carefully. "But only if people keep pushing, keep demanding accountability, keep refusing to accept the status quo. Change is slow and hard, but it is possible." Marcus eventually agreed to participate in one of the training sessions, sharing his own story with police officers. It was difficult for him, reliving that trauma in front of a room full of cops. But afterward, several officers approached him to apologize and thank him for his courage. It did not erase what happened, but it was something. 3 months after Officer Derek Brennan was terminated, the district attorney's office announced they would be filing criminal charges against him. The charges included official misconduct, filing false reports, and deprivation of rights under color of law. The last charge was a federal civil rights violation that could carry prison time if convicted. Brennan's lawyer held a press conference claiming his client was being made a scapegoat for political reasons. Officer Brennan was doing his job, the lawyer insisted. He made a legitimate traffic stop for a broken taillight. Everything that followed was within departmental policy at the time, but the public was not buying it. The body cam footage had been released as part of the court proceedings, and anyone could watch it online. The evidence was clear. Brennan's own words and actions condemned him. The case went to trial 6 months later. James had to testify, walking through that night one more time in front of a courtroom full of people. Brennan sat at the defense table, his face emotionless. When James made eye contact with him during his testimony, Brennan looked away. The defense tried to paint James as someone who was using his rank to punish an officer who was just doing his job. They claimed James had been uncooperative and that Brennan had reasonable suspicion to conduct the search. But then the prosecution played the body cam footage for the jury. All 12 jurors watched in silence as Brennan's aggression and racial bias played out on the screen. Lisa Chen testified for the prosecution, explaining how she had tried to get Brennan to back down and how he had refused. The 5 neighbors testified about what they witnessed and recorded. Sergeant Torres testified about the investigation and the pattern of previous complaints. The most powerful testimony came from Marcus Johnson and 2 other people who had filed previous complaints against Brennan. They each described their encounters, which followed almost identical patterns to James's experience. The unjustified stops, the aggressive searches, the false citations, the mocking tone and implicit threats. After 4 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for 7 hours. They found Brennan guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, James was sitting in the courtroom with Maria and several of the other victims. He felt no joy, only a quiet sense that justice had been served. At sentencing 2 months later, the judge gave Brennan 18 months in prison, 3 years of probation, and a permanent ban from working in law enforcement anywhere in the country. "You abused the power and authority given to you," the judge said. "You targeted vulnerable people, particularly people of color, and you used your badge to harass and intimidate them. This court will not tolerate such conduct." Brennan showed emotion for the first time, his face crumbling as he realized he was going to prison. His lawyer immediately filed an appeal, but most legal experts agreed it would fail. The evidence was too strong. James left the courthouse feeling exhausted but satisfied. Outside, reporters waited for his reaction. "I am grateful that the justice system worked in this case," he told them. "But I want to emphasize that this is not the end of the work. One officer was held accountable, but the systems that allowed him to operate for years need to keep changing. We need to keep pushing for reform." By the time James returned to full-time duty at Fort Meade, he had helped the police department implement sweeping changes. The new complaint process made it easier for citizens to file reports and harder for departments to dismiss them without proper investigation. Officers now faced progressive discipline for multiple complaints, with automatic review after the second substantiated complaint. The Civilian Review Board had real power to investigate and recommend action. The department also implemented new training requirements. Every officer had to complete 40 hours of bias awareness and de-escalation training annually. New officers went through an expanded academy program that included community policing, cultural competency, and scenarios designed to challenge their assumptions. Lisa Chen helped design much of the training, drawing on her experience and James's input. Chief Thompson launched a community liaison program where officers spent time working with local organizations, schools, and neighborhood groups. The goal was to build relationships before conflicts arose, so police were seen as part of the community rather than an occupying force. Not every officer embraced the changes. Some quit, rather than adapt to the new standards. Others were forced out when the audit of past complaints revealed patterns of misconduct. The department lost about 15% of its officers in the first year of reforms. But those who remained were generally stronger officers who supported the mission of professional, accountable policing. New recruits were different too. The department's reputation had been damaged by the Brennan case, but it was also attracting a new generation of officers who wanted to be part of positive change. Applications increased from candidates who specifically mentioned the reforms as their reason for applying. James was invited to speak at the graduation ceremony for the first class to complete the new training program. Standing at the podium in his Army dress uniform, he looked at the 73 new officers ready to take their oath. They were young, diverse, and idealistic. He hoped they would stay that way. "When I was pulled over on that night last year," James began, "I experienced something that too many people in this country experience regularly. I was judged not by my actions or my character, but by my appearance. I was treated as a threat rather than a citizen, and for a few minutes I feared for my life during what should have been a routine interaction." The auditorium was silent. Every officer, instructor, and family member present was listening. "But what happened after that night gives me hope," James continued. Officer Lisa Chen spoke up even though it was difficult and dangerous for her career. Sergeant Torres conducted a thorough and honest investigation. Chief Thompson took responsibility and implemented real reforms. The district attorney prosecuted the case. The jury delivered a just verdict. And you, the new officer sitting here today, chose to join this department because you want to be part of the solution. James looked at Sergeant Chen, who sat in the front row. She gave him a small nod. The oath you are about to take is sacred, James said. You swear to serve and protect. Not to serve and protect only certain people or certain neighborhoods. All people. That means treating every interaction with respect, regardless of who you are dealing with. That means holding yourselves and your colleagues accountable when you see misconduct. That means recognizing your own biases and working every day to overcome them. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. My military training taught me about honor, duty, and integrity. It taught me that real strength is not about having power over others, but about using power responsibly to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Law enforcement should embody those same values. When you put on that uniform and badge, you are accepting a tremendous responsibility. You are asking the community to trust you with authority that can be used to help or to harm. James looked across the faces of the new officers. Some looked nervous. Others looked determined. All of them looked young. What happened to me should never happen to anyone, he said. Not to a colonel, not to a teenager, not to anyone. You have the power to make sure it does not happen on your watch. Use that power wisely. Use it fairly. Use it with the understanding that every person you encounter is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's loved one. Treat them the way you would want your own family treated. When the officers stood to take their oath, James felt a weight lift from his shoulders. This had been a long, difficult journey. From that terrifying night on the side of the road, through the investigation and trial, through months of working with the department to create change, it had cost him sleep, peace of mind, and countless hours away from his family. But standing here now, watching these young officers commit to serving their community with integrity, he felt it had been worth it. After the ceremony, several new officers approached James to thank him and shake his hand. A young woman named Officer Rebecca Santos said, "Colonel, I applied to this department because of you, because of what you did to make it better. I promise I will live up to the standards you helped create." James smiled. Just be fair, be professional, and be brave enough to speak up when you see something wrong. That is all I ask. As James was leaving, Chief Thompson caught up with him. "Colonel, I know your 3 months with us officially ended last month, but I hope you will stay involved. Maybe quarterly training sessions? Or serve as an advisor to the Civilian Review Board." "I would be honored," James said. "This work is important. I cannot walk away from it now." Thompson shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for everything. You could have just filed the complaint and moved on. Instead, you helped us transform how we do business. That is leadership." Driving home that evening, James reflected on the past year. It had been one of the hardest of his life, right up there with his combat deployments. But it had also been meaningful in a way few experiences are. He had turned a personal nightmare into an opportunity for systemic change. He had used his privilege and position to fight for people who lacked both. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Johnson. "Saw your speech on the news. Thank you for not giving up. For the first time, I actually believe cops might treat people like me fairly." James texted back, "We still have work to do, but we are moving in the right direction." At home, Maria was cooking dinner while their 2 children set the table. His daughter, 15-year-old Sophie, looked up when he entered. "Dad, my friend Aisha shared your speech on social media. It has like 1 million views already." James shook his head in amazement. "I just said what needed to be said. That is why people are sharing it," his son David, 17, said. "Because you tell the truth, even when it is hard." After dinner, James sat on the back porch with Maria watching the sunset. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Are you okay? Really okay?" James thought about the question. Was he okay? He still sometimes woke up from nightmares about that traffic stop. He still felt his heart race when he saw police lights in his rearview mirror. The experience had changed him in ways both visible and invisible. "I am okay," he said finally. "What happened to me was wrong and it left scars. But I am healing, and I am turning those scars into something productive. That helps." "I am proud of you," Maria said quietly, "for fighting back, for not letting them silence you, for making change happen." "I had a lot of help," James reminded her. Lisa Chen, Sergeant Torres, Chief Thompson, all those neighbors who came out and recorded what was happening, Marcus and the others who shared their stories. "I could not have done any of this alone." "Maybe not," Maria agreed, "but you were the catalyst. You were the one who had the courage to demand accountability when it would have been easier to just let it go." The next morning, James returned to Fort Meade in his uniform. He had a full day of meetings ahead and a stack of paperwork that had piled up during his focus on the police reforms. But as he walked across the base, returning salutes and greeting colleagues, he felt at peace. A young lieutenant stopped him. "Colonel Mitchell, sir, I just wanted to say thank you. My brother is in the police academy now, and he is going through the new training program you helped create. He tells me about it all the time. How it is teaching them to really protect and serve everyone equally. You made a difference, sir." "Thank you, Lieutenant," James said. "That means a lot." In his office, James found a letter on his desk. It was from the Brennan case prosecutor, thanking him for his testimony and his work with the department. "Cases like this are difficult to win," the prosecutor wrote. "But your credibility, combined with the strength of your character and your willingness to stand up for what is right, made all the difference. You have helped make this community safer and more just for everyone." James filed the letter away and turned to his work. There were training schedules to review, budget reports to analyze, personnel decisions to make, the normal business of being a colonel. But everything felt different now. He understood his responsibility in a new way. He had power and privilege that came with his rank, and he had a duty to use those advantages not just for himself, but for others who lacked them. Over the following months and years, James continued to work with the police department on a consulting basis. He watched as other departments across the state and eventually across the country adopted similar reforms. His story became a case study in police academies and law schools. He was invited to speak at national conferences on criminal justice reform, but perhaps the most meaningful moment came 2 years after the traffic stop. James was at a community event when a young black teenager approached him nervously. "Excuse me, are you Colonel Mitchell?" "I am," James said. "I just wanted to say thank you. Last month I got pulled over for the first time. I was terrified. But the officer was really professional and respectful. He explained why he stopped me, gave me a warning, and sent me on my way. My friends told me I was lucky, but I do not think it was luck. I think it was because of people like you who fought to make things better." James felt tears prick his eyes. "What is your name?" "Jaden, sir." "Jaden, never forget that you deserve to be treated with respect by everyone, including police officers. That is not luck. That is your right as a citizen. And if you are ever treated otherwise, I want you to report it. Do not stay silent. People are listening now." Jaden nodded seriously. "I will, sir. I promise." As James drove home that evening, he thought about that terrified young man sitting on a curb in the middle of the night, wondering if he would make it home alive. He thought about all the people who had experienced similar fear and humiliation, and he thought about Jaden, who had a better experience because people had fought for change. The work was not done. It would never truly be done. There would always be officers who abused their power. There would always be systems that protected the wrong people. But there were also officers like Lisa Chen, leaders like Chief Thompson, and ordinary citizens who were willing to speak up and demand better. James had learned something important through this experience. Real change did not happen because of one person or one incident. It happened because people came together, each contributing what they could, refusing to accept injustice as inevitable. His military rank had given him a platform, but it was what he chose to do with that platform that mattered. He pulled into his driveway and sat for a moment in the car, the same car he had been driving that night. He had thought about selling it, but Maria had talked him out of it. "Do not let Brennan take anything more from you," she had said. "Keep the car. Take back your power." She was right. This was just a car. Just a driveway. Just another evening coming home from work. The nightmare had ended. Justice had been served, and the work of creating a more just society continued. One day, one interaction, one reformed policy at a time. James Mitchell, colonel in the United States Army, got out of his car and walked into his house, where his family waited with dinner and stories about their day. He was home. He was safe. And he had helped make the world a little bit better for the next person who might face what he faced. That was enough.